And we'll start with the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, and stop me if you've heard this one before, on the streets of Chicago. It was Shane Van Gisbergen. I think Adam Alexander said you have to spell Chicago SVG at this point. 6 races that NASCAR has run between Xfinity and Cup in the last 3 years. 5 of them SVG has entered. 4 of them SVG has come away victorious. So, Matthew, just to start off here, first, what was your reaction on Saturday and I guess on Sunday as well to SVG sweeping the weekend? And then his battle in particular with Connor Zilisch, I think, raised some questions. Jeff Gluck was asking, was that a fair move or a foul move, considering those two are technically teammates for this race? What was your take on the winning move in the Xfinity Series side of things on Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. My initial reaction was that makes sense. Honestly, that's one of the things. It just didn't shock you, right? We talked with Tanner and Joe on the other shows. It's like Jimmy Johnson at Dover, Kevin Harvick at Phoenix, I think Denny Hamlin at Pocono. Shane Van Gisbergen in Chicago, no matter what you put that guy in, he's going to somehow find a way to win. And even if it comes easy or difficult, he still gets it done. So the Xfinity race specifically, I mean, he kind of put on a clinic. He was on pole. He led over half the race, 27 laps. But Zilich was one of the best cars, arguably the best car, because Zilich didn't have the clean air like SVG had for a lot of the race, really. So the battle was, you got to love it, because I think we joked about previously. So last year when Zilich came in and was winning a lot in ARCA, then came up, I was at Watkins Glen to witness his first ever NASCAR Xfinity Series win in his first start. So it's kind of like, is he SVG's kryptonite in the sense where it seemed like he was doing better at the time than SVG was. But now it's like these two all have the pretty much same sponsors, same team organization with Trackhouse and then Junior Motorsports affiliation, Red Bull, WeatherTech, you name it. So I think they have a little bit of a battle going on, the new gun versus the old timer, right? Even though they're both relatively new to NASCAR. Was the move fair or foul, Ben? It's hard to say, honestly. I think it was kind of a racing deal in the sense, but it was more or less experience versus inexperience, I think. I think SVG's done more road course races in general in his racing career than Zilich has done races in general, I think. So it was about that, Connor had the preferred line. He had for the restart, but SVG just had done it so many times before, knew what he was doing. But the battle, I think it was a little over the top aggressive, in my opinion, but you got to do what you got to do. SVG's not there for points. He's there for victories. That's why Junior Motorsports is putting him in that number 9 car. That's why WeatherTech and Red Bull signed the checks over to get on that car. Granted, they do the same thing for Zilich, right? But it was funny. Junior said he came up to Zilich and was like, oh, that's kind of an aggressive, or it was an aggressive move. Sorry that happened to you. And then he goes up to SVG and he's like, damn right, SVG, that's how you do it. So a little bit of that. But yeah, I think it was more of a racing kind of thing. It just happens. But now I think Zilich is going to race SVG a little harder. And I think that what's going to make that more awesome, in my opinion. So that's my long answer to that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that, if these two hadn't been teammates for this race, technically speaking, of course, with Junior Motorsports, SVG getting in that number 9 car, Zilich, of course, in the 88 full time. If that hadn't been the case, then I think, we wouldn't be talking much of, was this fair, was this foul? It was probably a little bit aggressive, but I think, especially on a street course racing NASCAR stock cars, you have to expect that. I know Zilich said, maybe he expected a little bit more grace in that situation, and maybe it does give him a license to go a little bit harder at SVG should those two meet on the track again in the near future. But I think in terms of the actual finish, how it played out, not too much that Zilich can necessarily complain about here. And he still came across the line in second place. It'd be one thing if he had hit the wall and, had his day ruined and been the last car in the lead lap or been taken out in the closing laps or whatever. But that wasn't the case at all here. I think, when you're driving a stock car, you have to expect that Logan's going to be racing a little bit, especially on a tight, narrow street circuit. And, SVG only gets a few of these races a year now. Obviously, he's now full-time in the Cup Series trying to make that transition. So continuing the trophy hunting theme, I guess you could say, even though he's not with Colleague technically anymore. How badly he wanted this one and to pull off the weekend sweep, which he ultimately ended up doing on Sunday as well. So I think that, again, we'll see the next time these two are close to each other on the track, it might get a little bit more aggressive than would have previously been expected. But as for right here, right now, I don't think there's too much to it here. And I think both of these drivers, despite their differences in experience, put on a heck of a show and treated the fans in Chicago to something special in Saturday's race. And I want to give a shout out to Denver as well, one of our regulars. Good to see you here in the chat. SVG was showing Connor Zilisch some tough love, and his apprentice showing Connor, if you leave a door open against a supercars legend, you expect that he's going to run right through it. Plus, SVG got some supercars tricks for Connor at Sonoma that he won't like, but he will learn it the hard way and keep into his repertoire set. Yeah, of course. We just heard, I believe, was announced today that was supposed to be a Ross Chastain race coming up this weekend at Sonoma for that number 9 car, but understand that SVG is going to get a shot to defend his victory there at that track as well. So we'll see if he can maybe pull off the double again. Who knows here? And again, I will say the same thing I said about Suarez here on this show. I try to be universally consistent. I do not like the argument that, you just don't like Cup drivers in Xfinity when it's Kyle Busch. If it's anybody else, you don't complain. I tend to complain no matter who it is. Even with Daniel Suarez, as special as that moment was, I was still like, I'm only 90% okay with this because it's the principle of the rule allowing it here. But of course, in a situation like that, I think the pros outweigh the cons of Suarez getting to celebrate in front of his home crowd. So I couldn't be too mad about that one, and I can't be too mad about this one either. Obviously, SVG, as much as he is continuing to improve on the ovals, I think still has a long way to go before we see him competing for Cup Series wins. We might see him start to do that the back half of this year and into next. Who knows? But this is an opportunity where he knows he only gets a few of these every year to show what he can do on the road and street circuits. And he wasn't going to give this one to Connor very easily, and ultimately ended up getting the job done. So again, congratulations to him, and we'll see what he can do this week on a rare back-to-back road course weekend for NASCAR, and we'll see what we get when it comes time for Sonoma in just a few days here.